Pakistani Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh, thank you so much for joining us today on Al Jazeera. Ambassador, it was Pakistan which managed to push Iran and the United States to agree to this 2-week ceasefire. What was the magic word? What was the X factor that finally led to that breaking of that deadlock?
Well, in diplomacy, there is no magic word. It's always a process, a gradual process that requires a lot of patience, a lot of perseverance, and a lot of prolificity as you go. And I think each of these 3 points that I mentioned went into the intense diplomatic effort that took place over the past few weeks, actually. And I can assure you that there were many crests and troughs and ups and downs, but ultimately, since there was a lot of constructive, positive engagement, there was a lot of spirit in the effort that Pakistan conducted, not just on its own, but in consultation with multiple partners. I mean, the only thing perhaps that brings the spotlight on Pakistan is that we had the confidence of all parties.
Ambassador, as you said, this is an intense diplomatic effort. Can you talk about what sort of pressures we saw from GCC countries in terms of bringing Iran and the United States to that negotiating table?
I think, as I've mentioned, that there was constructive engagement and there was positivity. So pressure is perhaps not the right word. There was constructive spirit. So I think maybe we can say that there were positive influences from all around.
Ambassador, as you said, Pakistan has placed itself at the center of these negotiations. Obviously, Pakistan is a facilitator, a mediator here. But from a diplomatic point of view, how would you define success in these talks?
I think the fact that these talks are taking place is a major success on its own, because diplomacy has been afforded opportunity. And regardless of this particular episode, the world history tells us that it is always diplomacy that has resolved matters that could not be resolved on battlegrounds.
There certainly is a lot of hope around the world in anticipation that this conflict will come to an end soon. There's a lot of pressure on Pakistan to make sure that that happens. Can you give us an idea, Ambassador, of what these negotiations are going to be looking like behind the scenes? Will both parties here be sitting at a table together, looking at each other across the negotiating table, or will Pakistani mediators be having to go from room to room? What can we expect this to look like?
I believe all options are open. I mean, it's not that these negotiations are taking place without a backdrop of such negotiations. Similar negotiations between these two conflicting parties have actually taken place recently. And there have been formats that can be drawn on. As maybe the event or the negotiation progresses, there can be other formats that can be drawn on. So I believe it would not be good to either, have prerequisites or prejudgments or preemptions, but rather let the process flow in accordance with the comfort level of the two conflicting parties. But there are multiple choices in any such negotiation. And I believe they can and they may be all drawn on.
Ambassador, I'd like to speak on the challenges that lay ahead here. Considering the attacks by Israel in Lebanon, do you have any concerns that these talks could be derailed by Israel's military actions?
I think now that the delegations are expected in Islamabad fairly soon, and may actually be on their way as we speak, we should not be looking at or discussing derailment. I think that level of commitment to let the negotiations take place is there on both sides, and hence not just that the delegations have been designated, they are airborne maybe as we speak. So it should take place, but yes, the atmospherics would certainly be important. So whatever has been agreed upon going into these negotiations needs to be in play, needs to be implemented, and any digressions or any deviations therefrom, or even, beyond the framework or the discussion points that went into this process, if there is any untoward thing from elsewhere, it would have maybe, or it would cast perhaps a negative shadow on the negotiation process itself.
What kind of timeline is set here, and is there a readiness on the part of Pakistan to continue with these talks for as long as it takes, even if that means continuing these talks at a lower level?
Well, I think I started by saying that diplomacy is a gradual process. Not to say that it cannot bring about quick decisions or quick actions, which perhaps are the need of the situation in this particular episode of conflict between the United States and Iran. But Pakistan, like any other facilitator that has ever been there in such processes, stands ready to do whatever it takes to facilitate for as long as we have to facilitate. We cherish, we value, and we are grateful for the trust reposed in us. And as a repository of that trust, we would be willing to go the whole distance.
Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh of Pakistan, thank you very much for joining us today on Al Jazeera.
Thank you.